All right, welcome back to another episode of Reading with Dad podcast. I am Dad and you are?
Summer.
All right, welcome to episode 2. I hope you've watched our first episode, which was reading a book called...
Michelle.
No, it was reading a book called Face by Benjamin Zephaniah, and that was Summer's recommendation. And today we are also going to be looking at another one of Summer's choices, which is looking at Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. So we've both read this, and I can't wait for us to discuss what we thought about this particular book. And I promise you guys, next episode is actually my choice. We can't reveal what book that is yet, but we both love the book, which has also been adapted into a film as well. So you can start guessing what you think that might be, and we'll reveal what book that is at the end of this particular episode. So make sure you stay tuned. Summer, what should they be doing as we speak right now?
Right now you should be subscribing us. If wanted, put that notification bell on and like this video.
Yes, so subscribe, hit that notification button, leave a comment. What do you think? Have you read the book? What are your opinions? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Join our community of Reading with Dad podcast. All right, enough of that. Let's go straight into the book. Summer, please describe this book in your own words and tell us what structure was used to write this book.
So the structure of the book was put into 3 parts. The first part is Becoming Me, with her early life in her childhood, and it shows how she grew up in a rough apartment but still ended up being successful. And
the second part is called Becoming Us, which is looking at the relationship between her and Barack in a little bit more detail. Looking at their marriage, some of their struggles, political life, sort of the early days of the political life, and what it really meant to go from becoming one person to becoming a union in this marriage. So that is the second part of this book. And the last part?
And the last part is Becoming More, when they've had their 2 daughters, and Barack is now the US president and she's the first lady, so she sees all the struggles coming along with that.
Okay, so those are the 3 part structures of this particular book, and we are going to work our way through each of those structures. So, Summer, to me, I will kickstart by asking you a question in terms of, let's focus on Becoming Me, which is the first part of the book in regards to her childhood. Talk to me about what you thought about that first part of the book, and which part really stood out for you.
Well, the part that really stood out for me was how she, even though she grew up in a poor household, not even poor, but just a less wealthy household that didn't have as much advantages, she still ended up being really successful. Like, she worked really hard and she would miss out on all types of parties and hangouts and everything just to study. That means she got into Princeton, which was a law school.
Okay, so you're in school right now. So when you were reading about the amount of sacrifices she has done in regards to becoming intelligent, in regards to becoming successful in education, in terms of like you said, not going to the parties, that's a sacrifice, because as you know, it's like nobody wants to miss out on the fun, especially when all your friends are going there. And that's going to bring me to a word when I speak in a second. But when you think about the sacrifices she made, what do you think about you as a student right now? Do you think, you know what, I need to make sacrifices in order to get to that level of success? What kind of things were you thinking about when you was reading that early part of her life?
When I was reading that early part of her life, I was thinking about how me in year 8, knowing soon I would have to start taking my studies really seriously, because in year 9 I would have to pick my GCSEs out and start studying really hard to be what I want to be in the future. Okay.
All right. So I guess for me, one of the things that I got from that sort of early part of the book was keyword belonging. So it was more about looking at how she spoke about wanting to fit in, being that smart girl, not really feeling like, okay, she could hang around with the cool kids because she was intelligent. So not feeling like she belonged there. The sort of the belonging about being a young black girl within itself in regards to where she grew up and all of these things. And so it's like that keyword of belonging was one of the things that I got from that first part of the book. did you get that sense in regards to the sense of belonging when she was talking about fitting in? Because being in school, you want to make sure that you fit in within a crowd or you have a friendship group. What kind of things were you thinking about when she spoke about her early life and that word belonging?
Well, with the word belonging, I understood what she meant because you're intelligent, but then you also want to be quiet at the same time, so you're kind of stuck in the middle. So you're going to have to choose one, or you'll just stay by yourself.
Okay.
And she found herself as sort of a loner, so she just kept to herself most of the time.
Okay. So let me answer your question. If you had to decide whether to fit in with the crowd or to become that lone, intelligent person, knowing what your plans are for the future, which one would you pick?
I feel like if there was an option to be both,
yeah,
I would do that because that's more realistic type of thing.
Okay. So talk to me about what does both look like for you?
So both for me is having a friendship group that I can also be intelligent and myself with at the same time.
I think that's the perfect answer, isn't it? You dodged that one. All right, that's good. Okay, so are there any quotes, any things that you want to talk about from that first part of the book in terms of becoming me? Because I think for you could probably relate to it more because you're pretty much the age she was talking about in that part of the book in terms of that early childhood. What else stood out for you within reading the book?
Well, in one sentence, there was a quote that said, "To me, the magic was in the learning," which showed she knew that with her learning, she'll be something special in the future. And learning is a really, really powerful thing that not lots of people get to do.
Okay. So repeat that. What's the quote?
To me, there was magic in the learning.
There is magic in the learning. Can you identify with that? Can you relate to that? Is there been a point where you've learned something, maybe that maths equation that was very difficult, and all of a sudden when you got it, and you're like, oh my God, give me more? Because I remember when you struggle. So by the way, when she struggles with anything, it's like there's a little bit of a moan that happens. But when she gets it, all of a sudden, can I have more? Can I have more? Can I have more? Can I get more questions? Would you call that the magic? How would you describe the magic for you?
I'll describe it as when I start to understand stuff, I'd get to extend on it more and know what's in the future of the same subject.
Okay. All right. And I guess for me as a teacher, I think the magic is that light bulb moment when a student finally understands the concepts that you're trying to teach, because behind the scenes it's like, okay, here is my lesson objectives, here is my plan, and here are my resources. So you now deliver, you're standing in front of the class and then you're looking at students that just don't get it. So now your job as a teacher is like, how do I make them understand? All right. But eventually, when we get to that stage of seeing them understand, and I think I can relate to it from a teacher's perspective, is that's the magic of learning that Michelle Obama's talking about. So yeah, I think I agree with you. That's a powerful statement within itself. Is there anything else around her in the Becoming Me, which is more about her section, that you want to talk about?
Well, there was some back then there was a lot of racist comments going around, and then she did say another quote that said, the truths we face and ignore."
Okay.
Which shows that some truths she can't accept it because it hurts inside, but she'll just ignore it on the outside because it really hurts her.
Yeah. And I guess, having to deal with race being something that many of us have had to go through in one way or the other. And I guess, in America, it's very prominent in regards to all of the civil rights and all of the things that they've had to go through. Would you say that race was a heavy part of the theme within that early part of the book in terms of her childhood?
Yeah, because they mostly called it like a posh area, like where she went to school, and she was like one of the few black kids that went to there, so she was like pretty much standing out.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess for me, it's that beginning section. It's about working hard, sometimes not succumbing to peer pressure because it's easy to try to fit in, but doing what you need to do in order to become successful because you have a plan, you have a goal yourself. So yeah, let's go back to the actual reading of the book. It's quite a lengthy book. How did you find reading the book? Was it more of a stop-start for you? And what were some of the challenges for you? Was it an easy read? How would you describe it?
Well, at some certain bits, I found it difficult to read. Like, as in, I would go to you for help for certain words that I didn't know, or I would look it up. And
Hold on. No, that second part, that second part is slightly false. 9 times out of 10, she'll be reading a book and I might be deep in my work and she goes, "Daddy, what does this mean? What does this mean?" I'm like, what's the word? And 9 times out of 10, I'll know the word, but I'll say to her, "Okay, Summer, go and look it up, and pull it into your memory bank, and that's now a new vocabulary that you have for yourself." And if I'm honest, sometimes when I do say go and go and research it, it's because I don't know the word myself. So I'll tell her to go and learn the word and come and educate both of us. But it's good. That's what I say to you in terms of whenever you're reading, that's how you increase your vocabulary. So never skip over any words. I know you might make reading a lot harder because you having to go back and forth. But the more you read, the more you do that. Eventually, when you're reading other books, you find that you're not doing that as much because all of those words are now part of your vocabulary. But apart from some of the ambitious words, was there any other things that made it difficult for you to read? Was it an easy read apart from the difficult words, or would you find it an easier read because you was following in her life and her journey?
Yeah, I'd find it an easy read because I understood most of the bits because I've done my research and it was just kind of a page turner most likely to see what happens next in her journey.
Okay, good. All right, so moving on to the second part of the book, which is Becoming Us. So this is where Michelle is now talking about being married to Barack, sort of the early days of his political aspirations, the struggles within their marriage in regards to obviously now he's sort of entrenched in political life, in public office, and she wasn't too happy about this, was she? What did she speak about in this particular part of the book?
Well, in this part of the book, she was speaking about how she wasn't really a fan of politics because she found mostly the game dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And if she ever had kids, she wouldn't want them to go through that dangerous stage because what people can do. Okay.
And I guess for me, this second part is, I think the word I would use is her being vulnerable. She was very open within the book in terms of very honest in regards to some of the things that she spoke about in terms of about the challenges of their marriage. She often spoke about Barack being outside of the house a lot of the times, and being a family man myself, when you have children, it can become too much if you're doing everything yourself. And I feel like I won't say the word resented him because she knew what he was chasing, but at the same time, she still had her feelings about, being alone, even though she was in this marriage with Barack. Another thing that I found was quite interesting in terms of her sharing her vulnerability was her struggles of her pregnancy, in terms of she had to go through something called IVF. Did you know what that meant?
I've heard of the word before, but I knew she went through a miscarriage. Yeah,
so that's another part of her vulnerability that she shared in terms of losing a child, and I think that sort of was invoked a lot of emotion in me in terms of how she described that. But I think the most important part was, going through this intervention process of becoming pregnant, because when people are not able to get pregnant naturally, they have to go through sometimes a very expensive treatment called
surrogate.
No, not the surrogate path, but this is more of an IVF in terms of when they sort of implant the eggs and sperm and all of these other things that they have to do. But when she spoke about that, I thought that was quite moving, and shared her vulnerability around that. So that was a very interesting part of the second part of the book, which is she's sort of transitioned from becoming me to becoming us, which is now more about her life with Barack, and not just about this glamorous life in terms of, being the most powerful couple in the world, but it was more about the struggles that she'd had to go through. What other sort of struggles did she mention, or whatever parts or quotes do you want to share about that second part?
Another part she struggled with is how hard it was to be a woman. To be the first lady, you would get all these type of death threats and threats, and you'll just get shamed for wearing like clothing as in a cardigan.
Yeah. Let's move on to the third part. All right, becoming more. Talk to me about that. Do you have any quotes? What did you think about the whole part about becoming more? So now, what are they talking about? What was she talking about in this section?
Well, there was one quote that said it was possible that I was more in charge of my happiness than I was allowing myself to be, which shows like she had to put her happiness before, she had to put others before her own happiness to help others. And as she was first lady, she had a lot of responsibilities with the public, with her 2 daughters included.
Yeah. And I think for her, in terms of, you know, after this whole period of that historical night of becoming, you know, the first African-American couple, family in the White House, it was a historical night. That night, me and Uncle Eche were watching CNN and just seeing this historical moment, people crying, Whitney, not Whitney, what's her name? Oprah Winfrey and Jesse, all of these, you know, activists who were crying and very happy about their success. And so now she became the first lady. For me, in this particular part of the book, it was showing that there was more to her than just being a first lady, you know, because even though it was Barack who was the president, she had so much to give. For her, one of the things that they spoke about is where is it? Their commitment to social change in regards to they wanted to make sure that life was better for people. All right, what did you get out of that becoming more section? What stood out for you?
The things that stood out for me was how she said that how she needed to get security now because she knew that dangerous stuff could happen anytime, anywhere. Because people can get really jealous of people who have higher opportunities and advantages. And she wanted to protect her family, including herself. And then she started to understand Brock's perspective and started to understand more politics.
Did you feel like she gave up her career in order to support Barack's dream?
Yeah, I feel like she did a lot because she had to put him before her so he can make it to that high standard.
Yeah.
And she had to sacrifice certain stuff to help her husband.
How did she feel? How do you think she took that? How do you think she felt about that, having to sacrifice? Did she speak about that?
I feel like she supported him, but she was on the other hand upset because there was a lot going on and he was barely home and she didn't want this whole thing to drift him away from her. Yeah,
and I think like for her, she found that fulfillment in regards to no longer wanting to be in a law firm, but now wanting to support Barack. That's what she's been doing, but now to find her own fulfillment, which is in social change, you know, fighting for women's rights and fighting for some of the different social causes that she was fighting for. What kind of things did she speak about in terms of sort of trying to make change in the world, if you remember?
She was talking about how everyone should treat each other with the same respect because you should treat someone how you would want to be treated back.
Yeah. And
she just feels like the only thing that should be in the world is positivity.
Okay, good. Okay, do you have any questions for me around the book?
Was it a page turner for you?
Yeah, it was a page turner. It was very easy to read and I was more engrossed in her life story and how she told the story. And I think this section of the 3 different parts, like a 3-act story, sort of made it easier to read. So, okay, I knew exactly what the first part of it was, the second part and the third part was it for me. What was your biggest lesson that you've taken from Michelle Obama's life and book, and do you find her an inspiration to you in any way?
My biggest lesson is that I would have to put sacrifices in the future for my own education, and yes, she's inspired me in lots of ways of how she's done stuff and handled it her way. Okay.
I guess for me, my favourite lesson is looking at not just who am I, but who am I becoming? So when I look at the activities, all the things that I'm doing, all right, it's a journey, it's a process. But more importantly, as I'm doing these things, who am I becoming in doing those things? So I ask you, for instance, if you're hanging around with this type of people, who are you becoming being around these type of people that you know they they speak negatively about people. They have bad intentions about people. Being around those individuals, who are you now becoming? So for me, it's now looking at, okay, as a teacher, all of these things that I'm doing to help people, who am I becoming? Am I becoming a better person? So it's not about who am I now, but constantly what I have to ask myself is, when I'm doing all of these things, is who am I becoming? And so for me, that's my favorite lesson that I learned from the book. I think Michelle Obama is very inspirational. Her story and her accomplishments are fantastic. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed the book. And one of the quotes that I liked is, do we settle for the world as it is, or do we work on how it could be? And I think for me, that's a powerful quote, because how it could be is based on people taking risks and doing good things for other people. Before we finish, what is your rating out of 10? That's the big question now.
I think my rating out of 10 is probably a 9 or an 8.5.
Okay, you have to pick one.
8.5.
8.5. All right. For me, it's a solid 9. I'm going to give it a 9 because I feel like, 10 is pretty much perfection, but I will give it a 9 because I think it's well written and her story is very inspiring for me. So yeah, are you happy with your 8.5?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want to quickly reveal what book we're going to be doing next?
So the next book we're going to be doing on our next episode is The Hate You Give.
Oh yes, The Hate You Give, from one of my, the title comes from one of my favorite rappers, Tupac, which is, what does it stand for?
The hate you give little infants.
Yep, the hate you give little infants, F's everybody, thug life. So yeah, but this book is something we're going to be reading. So stay tuned for the next episode. Subscribe, share, like, comment, and all of that. Till next time.
Bye.